The dust motes danced in the slanted afternoon light, each one a tiny world illuminated before fading back into darkness. Evelyn Vance counted them sometimes, a futile exercise in focus that kept the other thoughts at bay. 17, 18. Her finger, sheathed in a white cotton glove, trailed along the leather-bound spine of a first edition Coleridge. 19. Silence was the first rule. The Vance Library was a tomb for words, and tombs were meant to be quiet. The only sounds were the whisper of pages turning and the soft, rhythmic click of the antique regulator clock in the main hall. It was a sound that measured out her life in identical, empty segments. Rule 2. Order. Every book had its place. The Dewey Decimal System was a crude tool for the public world. Here, the system was her own, a meticulous cartography of knowledge and history laid out across 3 floors of decaying grandeur. She knew every shelf, every squeaking floorboard, every shadow that fell at a specific time of day. Rule 3. The doors and windows were to be locked and checked twice. Once at 5 p.m., as the sun began to dip behind the distant pines. Again at 9 p.m., when the house was submerged in the deep, consuming darkness of the countryside. Anxiety was a constant hum in Evelyn's veins, a low-grade electrical current that never switched off. It was the price she paid for the silence, for the order. It was the scar tissue left by a childhood she could not remember, an event everyone called the accident in hushed, pitying tones. All it had left her with was a persistent dread of open doors, loud noises, and the feeling of being watched. Her world was these 3 rules, and the 60,000 books that obeyed them. The clock struck 5. Its chime was a deep, sonorous gong that vibrated through the floorboards. Time for the first check. Evie moved through the rooms with practiced efficiency. The grand reading room with its 2-story windows and gallery. The history wing smelling of old paper and defeat. The cozy, smaller nook that had been her mother's favorite, its shelves still holding her collection of Victorian poetry. Click. The brass lock on the terrace door slid home. Click. The heavy oak front door. Click, click, click. 5 windows in the main hall. Her heart began its familiar, frantic rhythm as she approached the east wing corridor. The door there was not just locked, it was barred. A heavy oak crossbeam sat in iron brackets, a permanent solution for a permanent problem. This door, more than any other, needed to be sealed. The accident had happened behind it. Her father had died behind it. Her memory ended at its threshold. She placed a hand on the cold wood as she always did. A faint pulse of nausea, a flash of something green and falling. Then nothing, just the empty, silent weight of the door. Satisfied, she retreated to her sanctuary, the cataloging office. A small kettle whistled on a hot plate. 1 tea bag, steeped for exactly 3 minutes. No sugar. The routine was a balm. She sat at her vast mahogany desk, the surface clean save for her computer, a magnifying lamp, and a stack of acquisition forms. The silence settled back over her, thick and heavy as a blanket. This was safety. This was control. It was then that she saw it. A book, sitting slightly askew on the corner of her desk. She hadn't left it there. She never left books out of place. Frowning, she pulled it toward her. It was an old volume, bound in faded red Morocco leather with gold tooling that was worn almost smooth. Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. A first edition, but not one from their collection. She would have known. She knew every book. A cold trickle of unease traced down her spine. Had she pulled it for restoration and forgotten? No, impossible. Her mind was a steel trap for this sort of thing. It was her only point of pride. She opened the cover. No library stamp, no bookplate. The pages were foxed with age, the smell of old, sweet decay rising from them. And then she saw it. On page 43, a single line of text was underlined in what looked like fresh, sharp graphite. She knew it was the rabbit's fault. The words seemed to pulse on the page. A sudden violent flash exploded behind her eyes. A woman's scream, high and terrified. The smell of rain and expensive perfume. A sensation of falling, endless, weightless falling. Evie gasped, jerking back in her chair as if burned. The room tilted. the shelves of books swaying like trees in a storm. She squeezed her eyes shut, pressing the heels of her hands against them until she saw stars. When she opened them again, the room was still, silent. The clock ticked, the dust motes danced, the book lay open on the desk, the underlined sentence stared up at her. Someone had been in her house, someone had broken the rules. And outside, as the twilight deepened to navy blue, a figure stood under the eaves of a distant oak tree, watching the single-lit window of the Vance Library through a pair of high-powered binoculars. He lowered them, a faint cold smile touching his lips. The first move had been made. The game was on.